Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay, and this is a bit of a just vlog style video, I guess. I just wanted to talk about this. It's kind of an impromptu video too, so impromptu that I had actually finished recording for the day by the time I'm recording this. I had put all of my stuff back in my room and was like just done with recording, but just randomly chose, well, not entirely randomly. I was watching a video, a couple videos, I guess, based around this topic, and I just kind of wanted to discuss it. It's something that I, I I've probably talked about a couple times before, and maybe even just mentioned randomly in a video here and there. Um, but it's a topic I just wanted to, I guess, make this video kind of dedicated to and discuss more at length with. I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible still, but I want to talk about this. So, as you can see by the title of the video, the question is, when did I know I was queer? Not just trans, not just pansexual, but queer in general. A general sense of when I knew I was queer. And you could give a lot of different answers to this. As a lot of you may know, I came out on November 25th, 2017. But that was my coming out date. I had obviously known before that. I had been researching, hearing people's thoughts on it, people who have gone through it, whether transitioning themselves or having been around others who have transitioned. And I'd been looking into things basically for like a year. But I knew before then. Before even thinking about all of that and before even questioning my gender, I was already out as queer. I, at the time, had believed I was asexual and biromantic. And had been for a few years, somewhere around then. I don't remember the exact year or day. But even before coming out as bi, as ace, as any of that, I knew. I honestly would say that I always knew. But I refuse to admit it. I refuse to acknowledge it. Because I grew up in a very conservative household. I grew up with parents who were and are conservative. To different degrees, at different points in my life, and to even different degrees from each other. I grew up being taught certain things. Whenever I showed interest in things that were not seen as typically manly, because going according to my assigned gender at birth, I was told that that was wrong. I was told to get into more manly things. And not only was I told this, I was practically forced into it. I was given gifts that associated with this for the likes of Christmas and my birthday. I was coerced into things such as sports and other such just media and whatnot as well that were more male appropriate, quote unquote. And I was only even allowed to watch stuff like Sailor Moon or Barbie only when I was watching with my sister. And it was only because it was seen as nice that I was spending time with her. When I was a kid, I was led into taking part in a lot of outdoor sports. I played on a softball, or not softball, a t-ball team. I I played street hockey with friends, baseball with friends. I joined karate for a short time, and so much more. I was led to try playing games like Halo and Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto because it was, for some reason, considered masculine to like those kind of games. And I had to hide the fact that I liked games like Harvest Moon, because farming simulators weren't manly according to a lot of people that I grew up around. And you look back on that nowadays, and of course it's ridiculous, but back when I was growing up, people still believed that. And yet, I still liked what I liked. I would watch shows, I would play games, read books, or even manga and whatnot at the time, back when I still read manga. Um, and I would see female characters, or hear about and read about female characters, and thought, like, their dresses look or sound so pretty. I wish I could wear something like that. But I would never verbalize this because I was afraid. I had convinced myself that I was wrong to think like that because I was told I was wrong to think like that. So I went with that. I couldn't be led astray, right? My parents, my teachers, the people around me, they had to know what they were talking about. They were older. So I went with it. I kept sticking to it and eventually started purposefully straying further and further away from the stuff that I was interested in. And there were, of course, things that were fine with my family and the people around me that I liked. Things like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, or fighting games. Things that I really enjoyed, and yeah, people were fine with me playing with that stuff. In fact, most of the time, you wouldn't see many girls doing so. There were exceptions, of course. There were definitely girls in the Yu-Gi-Oh card tournaments I would go to. I played against plenty of girls in fighting games. And I knew plenty of girls who played Pokemon. But most of the time, it was guys. And so the influences around me felt I was safe. It wasn't something that was going to corrupt me. And so I kept pushing this idea. And because of my beliefs being completely fueled by theirs, I began to take it into dangerous territory. Not for other people, but also for myself. Not just for other people, but also for myself. I became extremely, extremely bigoted. And I would hide it under the idea that it's just my opinion. I would hide it under the idea that I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just saying what I believe. I would be extremely transphobic. And even on Facebook, would make posts being transphobic openly when I had friends who were queer. And I was called out for it, but I kept saying the same things, that it's just my opinion. I bear no ill will towards these people. I just don't believe in what they're saying and what they're doing. And looking back on that now makes me physically sick to think about, to think that I was there. I pushed back my true self to try and be this ideal version that others wanted me to be. And I was becoming that. And that all really changed when I discovered My Little Pony. And I've talked before about how it saved me from depression and suicide, but it also opened my eyes to a lot of other things. I was a boy watching My Little Pony. I was going against what I had actively been told. And when I was watching it, like early on, even again, just ignoring the parts of it healing my depression and suicidal tendencies, it made me happy. Also because I felt like I was able to be myself watching it. I felt like I was allowed to embrace everything I had pushed away for so long. And I started to check out more stuff, not just from the show itself, but from the fandom. And I learned that it's a big fandom with plenty of guys in it, plenty of girls and NBs as well. And it started to make me understand a lot more. But I was still not quite there. I still had time after that where I was still stuck in the ways that I had been led into. But this allowed me to check out other shows. And through watching MLP and other shows, it started to slowly change. And I started to think about it. And at first it was just realizing, like, I'm not straight. That was the first realization. I'm not straight. And again, it's something that I should have known since childhood. Something that I did know since childhood and just was not able to verbalize, not able to accept and admit to. I came to realize characters from shows and stuff I watched as a kid, I had a crush on when I was a kid and never realized it, never acknowledged it, because I was pushing against that very idea. Characters like Kurama in Yu Yu Hakusho, characters like James in Pokemon, or Martial Law in Tekken. Characters who I genuinely had feelings for. But I was a boy. That can't be the case. I've been told that's not right. I've been told that's an abomination. The people at church say that that's against God. So I can't possibly be gay. Plus, I still like girls. I very much still like girls. So I can't be gay. That proves that, right? But then I heard about being bi. And I'm thinking, like, you can like both? And it threw me off. And I realized I was. I realized that I like guys and girls. And it's like, I was blown away. I was shocked. I was confused. But eventually I did learn to accept it in myself and came out. But then I also came out as asexual. And as I've said in the past, this was due mostly to a lot of trauma from the church and other influences around me that made me believe that sex was something dirty, that it was something unclean and something you can't take part in unless you're married, something that you have to turn away from or you're going to be sent to hell. It scared me. And because of that, I was afraid to acknowledge any kind of sexual attraction. I'm like, oh, I can't be into that kind of stuff. I just like people. I can be romantically attracted to them, right? And it evolved from there. Eventually, I grew to accept queer people a lot more and came out as panromantic, acknowledging the existence of non-binary people, something that I didn't before because I was told it didn't exist. And I came out as pan because I realized that I just like people of any and all genders. But I still was panromantic. And then in like 2017, early 2017, maybe even late 2016, I started thinking more about my gender. I started thinking about coming to all this stuff that I had come to, MLP and other shows that were or could be seen as more feminine. And I started to realize, but didn't still want to admit it yet, that I'm a girl, that I was never a guy, that was wrong. And I never felt right about that. And that's why I never felt right about being forced into all the stuff I was for that reason. And so, like I said, I did research. I started looking into it, looking into stories, looking into different people's experiences. And the biggest thing was listening to trans people talk about what it was like for them to figure it out, to come to terms with it, and to come out. And a lot of the stories I read about mirrored my own in a lot of ways. Not every way necessarily, but in a lot of manners, there were similarities. And I started to really think about it. And at this time, I had a friend who is a trans man named Kieran Strange. He's a consistent guest at my hometown convention of Youmacon. And I met him through being in one of his music videos one year, and we just have communicated every time he shows up there, and online as well. Well, I went to one of his panels in 2017. This was at the very beginning of November. And after the panel was over, it was a panel on queerness and whatnot. I went to talk to him. And I brought this up. I brought up that I think I might be a girl. And he was extremely supportive, extremely kind, and helped me as much as he could. But he also wanted to introduce me to another trans girl who was helping him with the panel and who was one of the other panelists. And I talked to her, and I got to really just discover myself there. And I knew at that point with complete certainty that this was the case. And so I told them. They were the first people I ever told, because they were the people who helped me come to terms with it. But that brought fear. I was afraid, what would my family say? What would my friends say? Especially the friends I have in church. I have been told by so long, by my family, by friends, by church, that this was wrong. That trans people were wrong. That being trans isn't a real thing. That it's people lying about themselves. That it's mental illness. Or that people are just turning their backs on God. Stuff like that. I was scared shitless, so I kept it to myself. And leading up to in the week leading up to the 25th, I started to privately come out to different groups of friends at a time. Some of them accepted it and were just completely fine with it and said that they were even happy for me. But there were some who turned against me. There were friends who unfriended me, who said that they would not call me by another name or by the pronouns I was choosing to use in their eyes. It was very mixed. And eventually I came out to all of them. And then the biggest fear, coming out to my father. He was the one I was worried most about, so he was the first member of my family. I came out to him, I told him, I just ripped the Band-Aid off. And his reaction was basically to say that he's not surprised. It wasn't a reaction of support, but it wasn't an angry one. It wasn't full of wrath or hatred. It seemed more passive. And at first I thought it was okay. It's like, okay, he's not yelling at me. It must be okay. He never once has used my chosen name or my real pronouns. It is 2023, years later, he has not once done so. His apathy was not acceptance. His apathy was not him being okay with it. And in the years between then and now, I have heard many times him actively, in my presence, denounce trans people. Not to my face, but while I was in the room. Or even near the room. Because he knows I would hear it. And I've had to live with that. And I still live with it, because I still live with him. Out of necessity. And it's terrible, but I had become solidly sold in my identity. I knew who I was. I came out to the rest of my family after that. And most of them accepted it, even if they didn't understand. And some of them took a little longer to start using the right name and pronouns. But mostly all of them have. My father is the only real holdout. And my entire family is pretty conservative. So that's saying something. And after coming out, it became much more apparent than ever that I always knew. Everything from my past, everything I had tried to push away, came flooding back to me. Everything that I had tried to hide, I remembered. And I understood why I did so much work to hide it. Why I put so much effort into pushing it away from me. because I was led to believe that I was wrong for feeling that way, but that I did feel that way almost my entire life. I knew since I was a young child that I was queer, that I was not just trans, but that I was, pan as well. I knew, but I couldn't verbalize. I couldn't accept it because of how I was raised. And that's why now I don't hide it at all. This channel is called Princess of Gay. I constantly talk about queer relationships in media and representation. I very often lean towards queer ships ahead of straight ones. It's some people might say I make it my whole identity, and in a way, yeah, because I wasn't allowed to for 25 years of my life. For 25 years, I had to hide who I was. So excuse me for wanting to shine, for wanting to be myself for once in my fucking life. I wanted to be me. And so, yes, I've taken it far. I've taken it to, you could say, an extreme. I'm very open about it. I make a big point of it. My channel is based around it to a degree. Even just yesterday, I was at the bar for a board game tournament, as I typically do each week. And I had to correct someone who was new there, about my gender. And luckily, even though she continued to make mistakes, she apologized and she corrected herself multiple times after that. And she made an effort to understand. She continued to make mistakes, but again, she would apologize for that. She would, correct herself. And that was really nice to see, even if she did accidentally misgender me a couple times after that. She was trying. It's still happening. My journey isn't over just because I've come out. I hear stories all the time about how long people have had to wait to come out. And I feel so much for these people because I was there as well. And I hear stories about all of these kids who are finding the courage to come out at such a young age nowadays. And I'm so fucking happy for them because they get to live their truth from a young age. And I hear all these stories, all these reports, all these articles about lawmakers in this country trying to put a stop to that, who try to claim that allowing children to be themselves is child abuse, and that it should be criminalized. And I see lawmakers fighting to make it illegal to be trans, who actively mock us on social media, who actively fight against our right to live, and celebrate, in some cases, when we die. And I see this stuff every day, without fail. Because in 2023, we're still too divided. As someone who who was at the other side at one point, I understand how absolutely wrong, how absolutely terrible these people are, because I was one of them. And it makes me sick that I was one of them. But I will not deny that I was. I will not lie about that. I will not hide that. Because I believe that learning from my past mistakes and my past wrongdoings will make me stronger, will make me a better person. Because I understand that those past mistakes and wrongdoings were as bad as they were. And so even in 2023, having been out for years, having been very open about it, publicly, being in a church that accepts me for me now, being amongst new friends who I have made since that time who accept me for me, being able to use the women's restroom, being able to wear cute outfits in public if I want, being able to just live as myself. It's not over though. I just recently, this past year, came out to also use they, them pronouns. I still consider myself a girl. I still consider myself a trans woman. But I accept they, them pronouns as well. I accept that there is a part of me that I connect that to. I still prefer she, her pronouns, but they, them pronouns is just as valid. And I'm going to continue to evolve in ways I won't even know. And that's a good thing. That's what I should strive for. And that's what we all should strive for, to continue growing, to become better than we used to be. And to remember where we came from. And not only for ourselves, but for others as well. We need to encourage people to not hide who they are, to not pretend to be someone else, to not force away their interests and their beliefs. They need to accept themselves. And we need to not only encourage this, but fight for it. Because if we won't, who will? We can't just let them get away with trying to shut us down. We need to fight back and let them know that we won't be silenced like that. That they can try and outlaw whatever they want, but it's not going to change anything. We're still going to be here. We're still going to be queer, and they're going to have to get used to it. That's not going to change. I didn't suddenly wake up one day and decide I'm going to be a trans girl now. No, I knew. I knew I was a girl, and I just didn't want to acknowledge it. It was something that wasn't just a sudden flip of the switch, a snap of the fingers. It was a long, long time coming. And a lot of people I've heard stories from have said the same thing. They always knew, even if they didn't realize they knew. But looking back after coming out, it was obvious. And so, my message to you to end this off is, again, be truthful to yourself and encourage others to do the same. If you yourself are not queer, be an ally. Support us, side with us, fight with us. Not just during 1 month a year during Pride, but always. Listen to us when we talk about our struggles. Do not diminish us. Do not dismiss us. Do not tell us we're being dramatic. Listen. Because we know who we are. We know what we are. We know our sexuality, our gender, our orientation. And no one can tell us we're wrong. Because no one else knows what's in our heart. And no one else has that knowledge of who we are individually, unless we tell them. So, thank you so much for tuning in, for continuing to support the channel, and for continuing to just enjoy my content. Even if I keep hammering this kind of stuff in all the time, it's important to me. It is my life. So yes, I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to make it my identity, because it is my identity. And if this manages to help anyone else out there, if this helps you, or if anything I have ever said helps you, thank you. It means a lot that I can help someone else. Even if it's just a little bit. Even if it's with another issue that isn't even about this. If I can help you, that makes it all worth it. And if it helps you come out in any way, I am always here to support you, and I will always be behind you. You will always have a friend in this community. So thank you. And for now, I'm Connie. I am a girl. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. And this has been my experience with knowing who I am. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all next time.